The room with 2 keys, he said, was ours. The alert blinked on our shared calendar at 6:37 p.m. Menu tasting, investors late. It landed in the square like a coin settling in velvet, smug and frictionless. 2 minutes later, Ryan texted, "Don't wait up. Might be a long one. You're the best." Read he only ever upgraded to the heart when the rest of the sentence wanted witnesses. I told the skillet of garlic to behave and turned it off before it staged a rebellion. Our apartment did the expensive kind of quiet, the sort that pretends to be patience while it measures you. I opened the window to give the night an excuse. The neighborhood was practicing celebration. A new rooftop bar had decided the street belonged to it. I considered a walk and then didn't. The calendar square glowed like a low-grade fever. At 7:21, my phone vibrated with a number I didn't know and a message that knew me anyway. If he's tasting menus, he started with lips. Level 18. Glass corner. Bring the face you use when you want to be impossible to read. It was signed with a single letter, the way you sign something you won't admit to later. J. Jules tended bar 4 blocks over and never lost a bet that mattered. He and Ryan traded banter the way sword fighters trade air. I once watched Jules light a peel of citrus and make 3 people think they were the reason it flamed. We had kissed exactly once in a walk-in fridge 3 winters ago when the power flickered. He'd tasted like a dare I returned. Then we'd laughed it back into flirtation because disaster had enough to eat. "Why tell me?" I wrote. "Because your calendar is too polite to be honest," he replied. "Also because the elevator won't say no to you." The hotel had been a bank before it learned to sell tenderness. In the elevator mirror, I tried on 3 faces and disliked all of them. The doors opened onto carpet that believed in money. Level 18 had the low hum of people who had ordered their appetites in advance. The glass corner held its breath and pretended to be a view. I saw him before he saw me. Ryan, jacket off, wrist bones talking to the cuff. Beside him, the owner of voices I recognized from a dozen articles and a handful of rumors. Damien Wolfe, the investor who made restaurants out of ambition and people out of narratives. Damien was the kind of handsome that likes its verbs direct. He wore a ring that looked like it owned a smaller ring. His laugh was the sound of someone signing a receipt you don't get to see. He lifted his glass and touched it to Ryan's in a way that insisted on memory. The room did that thing where it looks away so it can listen harder. And then Jules was there, leaning his hip against a column like it owed him rent. He put a hand on my sleeve, light as a rumor. "Brought the face," he said. "Good. Don't waste it on them." "You sent the message," I said. "You always did like stage managing." "The thing about stages," he said, "is they put light exactly where it will be cruelest and call it art. I'm giving you a choice instead." He tipped his chin toward the left-hand corridor. "Service stair, 2 doors. One is a balcony you'll hate yourself on. One is a room with a latch." "And inside the room?" I asked. "Air," he said, "and a bed that has seen worse lies." "Subtle," I said. "Effective," he said. We cut along the corridor, past framed photos of men in suits pretending steam meant history. Jules palmed a latch that didn't deserve him and pushed. Inside, the room was tidy in the way rooms are when they have not yet earned their stains. Floor-to-ceiling glass gave the city permission to practice mirrors. He closed the door with the heels of his fingers and stood with the faintest smile, the kind he used on drunks who thought his name was Yes. "I didn't bring you here to be useful," he said. "I brought you here because you deserve to choose whether tonight belongs to your spine or your throat." "I thought I was coming to catch him," I said. "You will," he said, "whether he knows it yet or not." He stepped into my gravity without asking for a receipt. His mouth found mine with the kind of respect that forgives the stupid parts of a day. He kissed like someone who had thought about it often and never admitted it. The first contact was careful. The second had intent. He tasted like pepper and the ghost of rye. When his palm slid to the back of my neck and held me there, I remembered what it felt like to be picked instead of recruited. He kept us on this side of Bear, making a map out of buttons and heat. It was not revenge. It was the body reminding itself it has other words. We broke the kiss not because we had to, but because the room wanted us to prove we could. He rested his forehead to mine and smiled like the problem had become solvable. "You're dangerous," I said. "You're lonely," he said. "It looks good on you and I hate that for you." My phone buzzed against my leg. I didn't look. From the glass corner down the hall came the sound of a laugh pitched to be mistaken for generosity. Damien, maybe, or the night itself. Jules let his hand drop and did the kind of tidy that leaves no trace. "You can stay," he said. "I'll stay too if staying is the verb. Or you can go and be brave and stupid in whatever ratio suits. You know where to find me after." He started to move and I caught his wrist. "What do you get from telling me?" I asked. "The right man's yes someday," he said. "Maybe yours, maybe not. Also the pleasure of watching your face when you decide you belong to yourself again." I left because I wanted to know whether I was still any good at walking into a room with my name on it. At the glass corner, a server in immaculate black tried to apologize to me for existing. I nodded him into surviving. Damien had slid closer to the glass to make the skyline do work. Ryan was half-turned toward him, profile offered, the throat of a man who knows his effect. There was a mark on his jaw just below the earlobe where concealer had failed to recall its brief. I had left that mark with my mouth 2 hours ago to keep him feral during the day. Damien's gaze found it and smiled like a secret done properly. "You made it," Ryan said, as if I'd been promised. He did not color. He did not touch me. Damien looked at me with the warmth of a tax attorney. "I couldn't miss a tasting," I said. "Everyone keeps saying the dessert is honest." Damien said, "You must be the partner," in a tone that made partner sound like mutual fund. He extended his hand. The ring flashed in the polite light, expensive and tired. I shook because every version of me knew not shaking would be writing checks I couldn't cash later. "Ethan," I said, "we've met your reputation, it photographs well." He tilted his head with the grace of a well-trained host. "Ryan tells me you like museums," he said. "How useful to be in the business of arranging what people feel." "And you arrange what they order," I said. "Both involve salt." Ryan's mouth twitched. He knew when to love me for my teeth. Damien smiled like he had funding for that line if I wanted it. Then he set his glass down and touched Ryan's wrist for half a second too long, the way one might check a pulse or a boundary. "I'm stealing him for a tour of the kitchen," he said. "You're welcome to wait or forgive us in advance." Ryan glanced at me and God help me, I recognized the man I had moved in with, the one who asked permission while believing he didn't need it. "Will you be all right?" he asked. "Define it," I said. The elevator dinged, perfectly timed, like stage management had a crush on drama. He didn't answer. The door swallowed them both. Jules was standing where the corridor decided to become plausible again. He had a look on his face that suggested the bartender version of sympathy. He kept his hands in his pockets like he was protecting us from them. "How brave are you feeling?" he asked. "How stupid do you need me to be?" I said. "Equal parts makes a night," he said. "Come on." He took me down the service stair past ice machines with excellent gossip and turned into a hallway with carpet not meant for shoes like mine. At a door marked with an unhelpful number, he paused and tilted his head as if listening for different weather. The handle gave in like it wanted to be admired. Inside, a suite had auditioned for a magazine and been told it was already famous. The bedroom door was ajar. From within came the murmur of a voice doing what voices do when they are trying for softness and not quite finding it. Jules stayed in the doorway like a witness who knows the limits of the oath. I stepped forward until the room offered me a version of them that wasn't an accident. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, jacket off, tie more undone than public would allow. Damien stood a half step away, hands open in that politician's pantomime of harmlessness, saying something about opportunity and risk and how nights are the only time to test a story for leaks. He reached out and smoothed the line of Ryan's shirt collar with 2 fingers. Ryan didn't pull away fast enough. I could have left. I could have closed the door and walked into a different version of myself. Instead, I knocked on the jamb once gently and watched both of them do arithmetic. "Hi," I said. "They're out of dessert in the corner. Thought I'd try the other place." Ryan closed his eyes and opened them again and stood and didn't step back. Damien smiled as if the room and I had just had the same haircut and he was generous enough to compliment us both. "We were discussing fun dispersion," he said. "My fault if the tone was misleading." "I'm not lost," I said. "You can talk like a donor or you can talk like a man. Consider it a tasting." Ryan said, softly, "Ethan." And there it was, the vowel he only uses when he is out of excuses and wants another choice. He took a step toward me like he had learned how feet work. "I asked him up to tell him I'm not bringing recipes to a room he wants to own," he said. "I was going to text you when the door shut behind him." "Before or after his ring left a mark?" I asked, and touched the spot under his ear with my thumb, not to accuse, to remind both of us where we live. Damien's voice stayed pleasant. "You're handsome when you pretend you're inevitable," he said. "And you, chef, are handsome when you think someone is grating you. I'm happy to be the villain if your narrative requires one, but it's more useful if I'm just a man who knows what time it is." Jules cleared his throat from the doorway in a way that said, "Your exits are all nouns." Damien took the cue like a pro. He poured 3 inches of whiskey into the etiquette of a glass and left it untouched on the dresser, then nodded to each of us with the sentiment of a service charge and went, leaving gravity to do freelance. When the door clicked, Ryan sagged into the bed like a person who had finally remembered which bones were his. I stood beside him until the room decided to stop holding its breath. Jules let the door fall closed and waited, not an audience, not an alibi. "I didn't kiss him," Ryan said, "because that is the line you have to say when it does and doesn't matter. I wanted to. I wanted to be a version of myself that could do it and be forgiven for style." "You want rooms to name you," I said. "You keep forgetting names are cheaper than rent." He stood and he was close, so close it felt like the window had finally admitted we could be seen and chose us anyway. He lifted a hand and didn't quite touch my face. I took his wrist and placed it against my jaw. He exhaled through his mouth as if oxygen had a personal flavor. "You could leave," he said. "You could kiss him in the corridor and tell me later you needed air and then we'd both be right." "I already kissed him," I said, and watched his pupils make a map and then decide it was still navigable. "I did it because he asked like a man who would let me stop on my own." I stepped closer. "Now I'm asking like a man who will not." He kissed me like he knew the city was watching and didn't mind. It was the kind of kiss you use to take back a room. His hands were careful but not kind. Mine were kind but not careful. Heat found our mouths and wrote its own statement. We didn't take clothes off. We didn't need to. The erotics of restraint can be more honest than nakedness. When the kiss broke, we let it, and we let the air pry our mouths apart without apology. Jules had turned to face the window. He was looking at his own reflection and giving it nothing. I can give you both 5 minutes of privacy or 5 hours of honesty, he said without turning. One costs more later. Ryan didn't look away from me. I want the hours, he said. Me too, I said. We left the suite with the whiskey unblasphemed. Jules walked us back through the corridor of borrowed hormones and unasked for destiny. In the elevator, he leaned his shoulder against the aluminum and watched our hands ignore the rule about being good in public. On the ground floor, he peeled off toward the bar with a ghost of a salute. Outside, the street had decided it was born for laughter and friendly crimes. Ryan took my hand and didn't let go until we hit our block. In the apartment, the garlic pretended not to remember. He poured water and we drank like mammals. He told me Damien had been building a trap out of compliments for months, and that he had helped build it because being admired by rooms is addictive and free in the moment and costly in the mirror. I told him Jules had texted me because he is allergic to wasted decisions. We didn't grant each other sainthood, and we didn't trade confessions for receipts. We let our mouths do the work of tomorrow. In bed, we left space like a line break. In the dark, he said, "Tell me I'm not just a man who needs to be supervised." I said, "You are a man who gets messy where rooms hold their breath. I will hold my breath with you, not for you." He pressed his palm to my chest, above the place where breath likes to turn into language. He fell asleep with his hand there as if the body could be taught to swear an oath. Morning found the calendar square empty and newly honest. I made coffee too strong for sentiment and watched him knot a tie over the throat that had wanted other people's marks. He looked at me like breakfast and said my name the way elevators say floors when they intend to arrive. I said his and meant it. At 10 a.m., my phone vibrated with one more message from the number that had started the night. "Next time you want a balcony, choose one with better weather." I wrote, "Thank you for the air." Jules sent back, "Keep your mouth for yourself unless he deserves it." No punctuation, always his style. By noon, Damien had posted a gracious concession to the narrative, a photo of the skyline and a caption about how the city belongs to people who cook and the people who fund them. He didn't name anyone. Later, Luca, my Luca, who had learned to be a Ryan for public and a Ryan for me, sent me a photo of our kitchen table with a single orange on it. "Room exists," he wrote. The night had been intrigue and the outline of betrayal, the erotics of almost and the salvageable parts of desire. It had been a city that keeps secrets for you until you decide you can. I saved the photo without nomming the album and breathed like a man with vows in pencil. The plant we hadn't bought yet supervised the door in my mind. The calendar blinked and thought better of it. And when Ryan came home, he didn't lowercase love me in a text. He put his mouth where his name was and let the room keep the secret we'd taught it, at least for now, while we practiced the art of being interesting to each other without having to call it strategy.